let's explore autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 134 of the series. Alright, so I left off in the last video with a comment. Jim Sinclair, one of the founders of Autism Network International, or ANI, stated on autistics.org back in the year 2000 in regards to the Hear Their Silence rally and interactions that they and some other autistics had with the founders of the organization. Now, I'm going to jump over to the testimony of a parent that was given in the April 6, 2000 autism congressional hearing, so you can hear what is being said about us without us. All right, this next testimony is from a parent named James Smythe, S-M-Y-T-H. And please keep in mind, sometimes the stigma and tragedy narrative that comes out in this testimony can be really difficult to hear when you're autistic or have a loved one who's autistic, and yeah, it's a lot. So just warning for content. All right. Smythe says in his statement, "Thank you very much, Congressman Burton, Congressman Waxman, and other members of Congress for this opportunity to speak here for my son and for the tens of thousands of autistic children around this country and the millions of people who are affected by this, literally, parents, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents, and so on. I will keep my remarks to 5 minutes, but I would like to make 3 points here, and I'd like you to write these down. The first is that living with these children can be hell. They can destroy your entire home. You cannot keep anything nice around. They will ruin your rugs. They will jump off the furniture. They will move the furniture around the room, push it over, break things, clear counters with one sweep of the arm, and they do all these things with no malice whatsoever. One cannot take them to friends' homes. One cannot stay overnight at friends' homes. When one is at a friend's or a relative's home, they will be worse there because it is a strange environment. The second point is that no one, to my knowledge, is consistently measuring acquired autism. This is that atypical autism that was spoken about earlier, the non-genetic kind, the kind that may not be autism at all. Right. So, he continues, and Congressman Waxman, you mentioned that there is no causal connection between autism and the shots. Mr. Waxman states, I did not say that. Mr. Smythe said that there is no measurable causal connection. Mr. Waxman states, I said there is a theory, and that theory is still controversial. Mr. Smythe states, is unproven, and I would suggest to you that we are now defining autism behaviorally, that certain activities, certain behaviors on the part of these children cause them to be classified as autistic, and then most of the medical community gives up. And there's a difference between classical autism, a child who is born autistic, and one that one knows is autistic, and most doctors have been trained about autism because that is the way they were born. And they show up that way. And this late onset autism that we're seeing, this acquired autism, oh gosh, if you will, there is a tremendous difference, and there may be many different medical causes, but because in our language we are not making that distinction, we are not able to follow medical cures or even medical causation. So that is an important distinction which I think needs to be made for all of us and by the NIH. So boy. All right, if you look at the insurance companies, if a child is labeled autistic, they will not cover it. It does not matter what the cause of that behavior is. If you look at the educational models, if you speak to the professionals in education, they do not have a distinction, to my knowledge, in the way that children who are acquired autistic are trained compared with children who are classically autistic, how they are educated. I feel like I'm in alphabet soup swimming around with all this circular speaking. Okay. The end result is that our educational models are not recognizing that some of these children may in fact just simply be sick. They may just simply be diseased. As a result, we are letting them down, and they're going through the educational system basically being warehoused without any treatment, either medically or educationally. Whoa, that really is a different narrative than what we're hearing from autistics in this same era. Vastly different. Smythe goes on to say, from a financial standpoint, the stresses are huge. When one has an autistic child, suddenly a whole new world of potential trauma has opened up, and there's very little known on this subject with regard to treatment. We have followed a number of different treatment programs: auditory integration therapy, vision therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and sensory integration therapy. We have participated in swimming and horseback riding, had CAT scans, allergy testing, stool analysis, and urine analysis, and all kinds of blood analysis. What we have noticed is that there is often kind of an uncaring attitude by the providers of many of these services that maybe we will find out what is going on, but their house is not going to be destroyed. They do not have the motivation or the drive, it seems, to research this process. But it is very important to research. He goes on to say, our school system is so overwhelmed that a recent Indianapolis Star article said that the state of Indiana has now changed the rules so that a special education teacher can include anyone who has a college degree. What kind of special education is that? There is such a need out there, and the burdens are only going to become much greater. The waiting list for Indiana's Medicaid waiver is in... Repeat. The waiting list for Indiana's Medicaid waiver in order for a parent to get some financial assistance here is 3 years. And as I understand it, it is growing. It has to grow with the increase in the numbers of these children. The ignorance in the insurance industry is phenomenal. I noticed that the Secretary, Shalala, and the First Lady spoke about the use of Ritalin in children. And I have heard that 10 to 20% of children are now on Ritalin. Has it occurred to anyone that there may very well be, and almost certainly is, a causal connection that is related between ADD and this increase in autism, that they may all be part of one spectrum? I suggest that this needs to be looked at, but we have to make distinctions in language in order to do that. Mr. Burton, Mr. Smythe, if you could summarize. Oh, this is, I think, I'm not sure who's talking, but they're interjecting and saying, Mr. Burton, Mr. Smythe, if you could summarize, please, we would appreciate it. I know that you have a lot to cover, and we do appreciate your testimony. Mr. Smythe says, thank you, Congressman. The bottom line is that there are ways to measure how at least some of what is now showing up as autistic behavior seems to be immune-related and is affecting the brain differently from most of us. How can it be treated and then cured? How the treatment itself can be seen to produce results in the return of blood flow to the brain. I sincerely request that the members of this panel, the National Institutes of Mental Health and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, look very carefully into this process and support the healing of these children, at least a subset which is probably responsible for this large increase. Thank you very much. Oh, goodness. So the large increase in this epidemic is now not autism, but a new kind of autism that may not be autism at all. Do you remember all of this from back then? Running around? Oh, when they start talking like this, I know it's coming from the autistic knowledge base, or it's all Bernard Rimland related. Oh my gosh. When they're talking like this is all going back to Bernard Rimland's school of thought and ideas and... oh, goodness. All right. So that was a very different way of speaking about being a loved one of an autistic.